Stone her! The shout cracked through the heat, sharp as a whip. Mara Tilling knelt in the dust, her wrists bound, her mouth bleeding where her lip had split from the last blow. The ground was hot beneath her knees, baking, blistering, but she didn't move. She didn't beg. The world around her spun slow and mean, full of faces that once called her neighbor. A woman sobbed in the crowd, but no one stepped forward. "By the law of kin," shouted Elias Tilling, thick-necked and red-faced, "she's guilty of hexing my brother." The cattle died, his eyes turned yellow, and he spat blood for the last moon. This woman put evil in his house. She poisoned his supper and hexed his sleep. Someone muttered, "Might have been the whiskey." Another, "Hush him quick." The sheriff leaned against the post outside the saloon, toothpick in his mouth, not even watching. A dog yawned in the shade beside him. The preacher stood silent, hands folded. A buzzard circled overhead. Elias lifted the first stone, smooth and gray like river bone. His fingers curled around it with reverence. "Judgment comes down like thunder," he declared. Dust whipped across the open lot, tangling in Mara's hair. Her blue dress, torn at the collar, fluttered like a flag of surrender. She lifted her chin slowly, one eye swollen shut, the other fixed on Elias with a gaze that held no fear. Only fire. "You call this justice?" she rasped. "This ain't law. It's cowardice dressed in grief." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The younger Tilling boy, barely 20, with eyes like wet mud, hesitated. The stone in his hand wavered. "Shut her mouth," Elias barked. The stone rose. A scream pierced the air, but it wasn't Mara's. It came from above, a sound like a hawk shrieking through a canyon. Heads turned. Elias froze, arm cocked. The whole town turned to look at the ridgeline just beyond the dry riverbed. There they stood, 5 riders, motionless, dark as burned wood against the orange sky. Horses pawed the ground, snorting dust, their faces painted, feathers and bone glinting in the dying light. No one moved. Even the wind seemed to halt. "Comanche," someone whispered, and the words spread like prairie fire. Elias stepped back, spooked. "Why are they here?" The sheriff straightened up at last, hand on his holster. "Don't know," he muttered, but didn't move forward. The 5 began their descent, silent but swift, down the steep rock, horses weaving like shadows over shale and scrub. The leader rode first, tall, wrapped in buckskin, face streaked in red and black. Around his neck hung a carved feather, bone white. A woman gasped. "They're headed for the square." Elias cursed and stepped back. "Stand ready. This is our land." The leader pulled his horse to a halt just feet from Mara. The other 4 fanned out behind him, no weapons drawn, but their presence alone was heavier than any gun. They didn't speak English, not yet. Didn't need to. The leader's eyes met Mara's. Recognition passed between them. Quiet, deep as the canyon floor. Elias raised his gun. "Back off, Redskin. This ain't your quarrel." The leader didn't flinch. Another rider leaned down and spoke in Comanche, voice low, sharp as flint. Mara didn't understand, not fully, but she caught one word, dead. The rider dismounted. A younger man, bare-chested, scar over his collarbone, long braid down his back. His boots kicked up dust as he walked past the frozen circle of townsfolk, straight toward Elias. Elias raised the pistol higher. The young warrior didn't blink. "Don't do it, son," the sheriff warned, but it was too late. Elias fired. The crack rang through the canyon, echoing into nothing. But the warrior had already moved. The shot missed by inches. In a blur, the young man knocked Elias's legs from under him and slammed his wrist into the dirt. The gun skidded away. The warrior stood over Elias, unarmed, calm. Another man shouted and drew steel, but one of the Comanche behind him fired into the air. The boom of the rifle stilled every hand. The leader dismounted and stepped toward Mara. He knelt beside her. Gently, he pulled a small knife from his belt, not to harm, but to cut the cords from her wrists. The crowd held its breath. He helped her to her feet. She swayed. The leader turned to face the townsfolk and spoke for the first time, slow and deep. "She gave my son breath. She took his pain. When frost came and no one opened their doors, she did. I repay her now." His English was heavy but clear. The preacher stepped forward, uncertain. Elias groaned on the ground. The leader turned his back on them all. Mara stumbled forward, weak, dazed, but still standing. The younger warrior took her arm gently and led her to a spare horse. She mounted with help. The sun flared behind them as the 5 warriors turned back toward the ridge. No one stopped them. The posse watched, mouths dry, hands twitching but useless. Mara didn't look back. Only the wind did. It stirred the dust, rattled loose boards, carried whispers across the wide plain. Whispers that would grow louder with every retelling. The hooves thundered beneath her. Mara clung to the saddle horn, hands blistered and slick with sweat. The Comanche rode hard, cutting through dry creeks and scrubland like arrows loose from the bow of God. Dust clawed her throat. Her legs screamed, but she didn't dare fall behind. The sun dipped low behind red bluffs. Shadows stretched across the land like reaching fingers. They hadn't spoken since they left the town. Not a word. Only the wind in their ears, the sharp commands in Comanche between riders, and the rasp of breath from the horses. She rode a bay mare that moved smooth but fast, ears twitching with every gust. Around her, the riders flanked like wolves. When they finally stopped, it was in a narrow canyon with high, jagged walls that swallowed the light. One man dismounted and scanned the ridge with his eyes. Another gathered dry brush for a fire. The youngest, bare-chested, with dark braids, took her reins without asking and helped her down. Her knees buckled. He caught her by the elbow, then stepped away just as fast, eyes avoiding hers. She straightened, pulled herself upright. The leader, the tall one with the bone feather around his neck, removed his war paint with a strip of damp hide. Beneath the streaks, his face was lined with age, but his eyes held no softness. Still, he nodded once. A quiet acknowledgement. She watched them work in silence until the fire cracked to life, its smoke curling up into a sky now bruised with dusk. No one sat. No one spoke English. Not until the boy, the one she had once called Eagle Eyes before he had a warrior name, came forward. He knelt by the fire, looked at her, serious and still. "You remember?" She stared at him. His voice had changed. Lower now, harder, but the face beneath the paint was the same boy she had pulled from a blood-spattered snare, trembling and near death. The snow had fallen thick that day. Her husband had just been buried. She had nothing but silence in the cabin and pain in her chest. "I remember," she said. He nodded. "You saved me. I didn't think you lived." "I lived." He pulled something from his satchel. A strip of blue fabric, weathered, frayed. The same cloth she'd torn from her own dress to bind his wound years ago. She reached to take it, but he held it back. "I keep." She swallowed. "Why now? Why come for me?" He looked to the elder. The man stepped forward slowly, sat on a flat rock near the fire, and spoke with careful, deliberate English. "Blood must answer blood. Debt is sacred." She shook her head. "You didn't owe me this. You shouldn't have come. You gave what you could not afford. In winter, when breath freezes and hunger walks the land, you gave life to my son." She dropped her gaze. "I did what anyone would have." "No," he cut her off. "Not anyone. Not your kind. You had nothing. Yet you gave. My boy lived. That cannot be forgotten." She stared at the flames, the way they curled and snapped, eating the darkness. "They'll come after you now," she said. "The Tillings. The law. Every man in that town will ride for you." "We know," said the boy. His voice didn't shake. The elder added, "We ride alone. No war. No tribe. Just 5. 5's not enough," she whispered. The boy's eyes narrowed. "It was enough for you." The fire popped. She turned away, stepped into the dark, and leaned against the canyon wall. Her arms wrapped around herself like armor. She looked up, stars breaking through the blue, quiet and indifferent. "I didn't mean for any of this," she said to the night. "I only wanted a quiet life, a place to bury my grief." The elder rose slowly. He came to stand beside her, but did not touch her. "No one chooses the storm," he said, "but some stand in it." A pause. Then, "You carry thunder behind her eyes." She turned to him. "I carry loss." He nodded. "Same thing." Behind them, the other warriors spread bedrolls in silence. The boy, now no longer a boy, stood watch at the canyon mouth. He never once looked away from the darkness. She sat down by the fire at last, pulled her shawl tight, watched the flames dance. The elder knelt across from her, laid a hand on the earth. In our ways, when a woman saves a child, she becomes his blood. You are not our enemy. I'm not yours, she said. But the world thinks otherwise. He looked up. Then let the world be wrong. No one sang that night. No stories were told. Only fire. Only silence. And in that silence, Mara Tilling didn't feel safe. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. Somewhere in the far distance, a coyote howled once. And then the wind turned. Heard they took her west, into the cliffs. The words hissed through the saloon like spilled whiskey. Elias Tilling slammed his mug down, foam flying. Around him, ranch hands and bounty men leaned close, eyes gleaming with rage and cheap courage. They came into our town like ghosts, Elias growled. Stole from us in broad daylight. My brother's land, his name, defiled. The sheriff leaned on the bar, jaw tight. You called her a witch. That don't make her your property. Elias glared. She's a thief and a liar. And if you won't bring her back, I'll do it myself. Outside, spurs clinked. Hooves stomped the dirt. Before noon, 12 men rode east, rifles on their backs, eyes fixed on the canyons where law thinned and revenge fattened. Atop the cliffs, the wind howled through the rocks like an old curse. Mara gripped the edge of the bluff and peered down the steep path below, barely wide enough for one horse, crumbling and cruel. Behind her, the Comanche sharpened spears, checked their bows, oiled their rifles in silence. Hawk's Cry crouched near the edge, his eyes scanning the horizon. He pointed. Dust. South Trail. How long? Half a day. Less if they ride stupid. She turned away from the cliff, heart hammering. Her boots slid against the stone, catching herself on a branch as sharp as knives. Then we don't have time, she muttered. Running Fox looked up from where he tied a net of jagged stones. We may time. Mara stepped toward him. You'll be outnumbered 3-1. He didn't answer. I can help, she said. Hawk's Cry shook his head. You've helped enough. No, she snapped. I've been running since Missouri. I ran from sickness. I ran from men with torches. I married into a family thinking I'd found peace. And now they want me buried beneath the same dirt. The warriors paused, listening. I won't run again. She strode to her saddlebag and pulled out the old revolver, her first husband's Colt Dragoon. Heavy, worn, untouched for years. She opened the cylinder, loaded it one bullet at a time. Each clicked like a drumbeat in her chest. I was a nurse, she said, not looking up. During the war, I held men's guts in place while they screamed for their mothers. I dug bullets out with pocket knives and prayed over the ones I couldn't save. That's where I learned to shoot, when mercy needed a quicker hand than God. Hawk's Cry stared at her, face unreadable. You never told me that. You never asked. She looked out at the canyon's mouth. Her voice dropped. Let them come. By dusk, the trap was ready. The outpost sat like a ghost's ribcage in the cliffs. Half-rotted beams, a collapsed watchtower, a narrow pass leading in and no easy way out. High rocks above. Choke points. Shadows. Mara moved through it like memory. Laid broken glass in chokeholds. Refilled canteens. Cut strips of cloth for bandages. When she passed the central tent, she saw Running Fox laying a hand on Hawk's Cry's chest, murmuring a blessing too old for her ears. It reminded her of prayers whispered over dying soldiers. She looked away. She found a flat stone and sat, hands trembling. The revolver rested in her lap. She traced the name etched in the grip, J.T. Holloway. Her first love. Her first grave. Your husband teach you to shoot? Hawk's Cry stood nearby, arms folded. She shook her head. He was scared of guns. Said I had to steady her hand anyway. A pause. I'm sorry he died. So am I. They watched the sky together. A hawk soared above the canyon rim. Why didn't you tell the town what really happened to your husband? He asked. She sighed. They wouldn't have cared. They never wanted truth. They wanted someone to blame. Do you fear them? She looked down at her shaking hands. Then at the gun. No, she said. I fear what they'll make me become. Night fell thick and heavy. The wind stilled. Horses snorted in the dark. Then hoofbeats. Close now. Sloppy. rushed. Mara stood, cocked the revolver. The 5 warriors moved like ghosts, each slipping into position, behind rocks, under ledges, bows drawn, rifles aimed. Mara knelt near the center trail, heart steady now, breath deep. The posse arrived loud, yelling, torches raised. Elias in front, his face like carved stone. He shouted, "Return her to us, or burn with her." A single shot cracked the silence from Mara's Colt. It struck the ground inches from his boot. Dust flew. The posse reeled back. She stepped into view. "I'm not yours," she said, voice clear. "You want me, come earn it." Elias snarled. "Which?" She leveled a revolver. "Widow. Nurse. Shooter." Hawk's Cry fired next, took a man's rifle clean out of his hands. Another trap snapped shut, snapping a horse's reins. Chaos exploded. The canyon roared. Firelight flashed off stone. Arrows flew. Rifles cracked. Men screamed. Horses panicked. Mara dropped low, fired twice, hit a torch, scattered flame, disoriented 3 riders. One charged. She stood her ground. He raised a club. She shot him in the leg. He fell screaming. No mercy, but no death. The Comanche fought like wind, appearing, vanishing, striking without pause. No war cries. No glory. Just precision. Mara ducked behind a wagon, reloading, her hands moving fast and sure. The same way she'd loaded morphine. The same way she'd stitched skin. A cry of retreat. Another man disarmed. Then silence. Elias lay on the ground, his gun gone, face bloodied. He looked up and saw her, Mara, standing tall, smoke rising behind her, jaw set like granite. "You're nothing," he hissed. She raised the Colt. "No," she said. "I'm what you made." She lowered it, turned her back. "Let him live." Dawn broke slow. The posse was gone. The canyon quiet. The wounded treated, their horses spared. Mara sat by the fire again, cleaning the Colt. Hawk's Cry watched her from across the ashes. "You don't have to keep running," he said. She didn't answer, but she didn't pack her bags either. Boots slid on shale. A rider screamed. A rifle cracked from above. Stone burst beside a man's leg. He dove, tumbling from the saddle. Another horse reared and fled, riderless, down the canyon trail. Elias Tilling shouted over the gunfire, face twisted. "Hold the line. It's 5 of them. Just 5. But 5 was enough." The canyon lit up with thunder. Arrows snapped like hornets, hitting buckles, knocking rifles from hands. A trap of rocks gave way with a pull of hidden cord. 3 men swept down in a crush of dust and bone. Mara moved through the chaos like she was back in a field hospital. Focused. Cold. The Colt bucked her grip once. Then again, 2 shots, deliberate. One cracked a torch, sending fire licking up a dry bush. The light shifted. Shadows danced. "Flank right." Elias bellowed. "Cut him off." But the narrow pass twisted. The warriors had chosen their ground. Hawk's Cry vaulted from a ledge, tackled a rider mid-swing, rolled and rose with a blade drawn. A quick flick, non-lethal. Precise. Running Fox shouted something sharp. The youngest of the 5, still barely more than a boy, let out a sharp whistle. 3 more men disarmed, scattered, tripping over brush, one sobbing into his palms. Mara turned and saw the oldest Tilling's brother charging. He had a long knife, his eyes wild. She aimed. Too far. He was on her in seconds. She ducked left. He swung wide. The blade caught her shawl, not skin. She twisted, elbowed him hard in the gut. He staggered. She raised the Colt. His hands flew up. "Don't. Please." Her finger hovered over the trigger. Her breath came hard. Behind her, Hawk's Cry shouted, "Mara!" She fired. The bullet smashed the blade from the man's grip. He fell back, screaming, hands red. Not dead, just broken. The others fled then. What was left of them? Dust clouded the retreat. Curses and hoofbeats faded into the cliffs. One gunman threw down his hat. Another sobbed like a child. Elias stood alone. His coat torn, face bloodied, one eye swelling shut. He looked up at her, chest heaving. "You think this is over?" he spat. Mara stepped forward. The Colt hung at her side, smoke curling from the barrel. "I didn't kill you, Elias," she said. "That mercy? It's not yours. It's mine." He lunged. One step. That was all he got. The fifth Comanche, silent the whole fight, appeared behind him, club in hand. A crack. Elias dropped like a bag of sand. Silence settled. Not peace, but silence. The wind sighed through the pass. The smoke rose, and 5 warriors stood, untouched, around the woman who would not die. By noon, the canyon was clear. The wounded were treated. No one died, not by Mara's hand, not by theirs. The Comanche gathered what little they brought, saddled their horses without a word. Dust on their faces, pride in their posture. Running Fox looked to Mara. "This is done." She nodded. "It is." Hawkscry stepped forward, holding something small. A sliver of leather, painted blue. "You gave this to me when I was broken. It kept me strong." He pressed it into her hand. She closed her fingers around it. "I was only trying to help." He looked at her, eyes clear. "You helped me become a man." She met his gaze. "You helped me become one again." The 5 mounted. She stepped back, hand still wrapped around the leather token. Running Fox raised a hand in farewell. No speeches, no promises. They rode out like mist, gone before the sun could blind them. When Mara returned to town, she walked alone, boots coated in red dust, face bruised, lip split. No one stopped her. The sheriff watched from the jailhouse porch. He tipped his hat once, said nothing. The saloon doors creaked. Voices hushed inside. No laughter. The preacher, pale-faced, fumbled through his notes that Sunday, stumbled on every verse about justice and vengeance. And Elias? Elias Tilling sold the family land, left within a week. Some say he never spoke above a whisper again. Others say he heard hoofbeats in his sleep. Years passed. Story spread. A Comanche elder sat by a fire deep in the canyon lands, gray hair whipping in the wind. Children listened. They say she knelt in dust, with stones aimed at her head, and still she didn't bow. They say 5 warriors rode in without fear, not for war, not for blood, but to honor a debt. They say she stood beside them, pistol in hand, eyes like lightning, heart unbroken. And when the storm passed, she didn't run. She stayed. She healed. She became legend. The flames danced in young eyes, and the name Mara Tilling blew like wildfire across the plains.